Hello and welcome to Would I Recommend. Today we're going to be taking a look at Jinrui wa Suitai Shimashita, or Jin-tae for short, or as it's known in English, Humanity Has Declined. Alright, so what kind of show is Jin-tae? Well, it's a comedy fantasy show that's been set in a post-apocalyptic world, and although it's not been listed as one of the quote-unquote official genres of Jin-tae, I feel like the show's kind of a mystery show because it just kind of gave off that vibe, which I believe had a lot to do with the episode structure of the show, but I'll go into that a little bit more later. So moving on from that, let's take a look at the story. Alright, so I mentioned that the show is set in a post-apocalyptic world, but to further expand on that, Jin-tae is specifically set in a world where the old humanity has declined in numbers. That being us, humans, people, right? And so due to the decline of the old humanity, a new humanity has become the primary life form on Earth. That being fairies. Now, the fairies are really curious little bastards, but it being one of the more interesting parts of the show, I don't really want to talk about it further because it might kind of spoil the show. So if you want to find out more, you're just gonna have to watch it. Now, if you're like me, you'll be thinking that fairies and a post-apocalyptic world are an odd combination, and, well, that's because it is an odd combination. It's not very typical. And if you watch Jin-tae, you'll find that it's filled with a whole bunch of these kind of odd combinations. So that was basically the setting for Jin-tae, but the story is essentially that our main character, Watashi, meaning I or me in English, is a mediator, which means it's her job to interact with the fairies on behalf of the humans. And so, the show essentially covers Watashi's interactions with the fairies and the world around her. So I mentioned before that even though Jin-tae isn't listed as a mystery show, it felt like it was one. And from what I can gather, there's two primary things that contribute to the feeling of mystery that Jin-tae provides. The first reason being that the release order for Jin-tae is not in any way similar to the chronological order of the show, so as we watch the show, we end up with a lot of questions to then have them answered later on. The second reason is that with the exception of 2 out of the 12 episodes, every episode is on a 2-episode structure, which is really nice because it means we can have one episode which builds up the scene and the mystery, and then we can have a second episode that's dedicated to kind of answering the questions we had. That said, there are just times where the 2 episodes just allow for a longer story, or arc thing, Now, I want to quickly touch on the comedy so I can tell you why I liked it, yeah? I found that a lot of the reason why I like the comedy in Jin-tae is for the same reasons that I like the comedy in a show like Hataruku Mao-sama, that being the delivery of the lines. Watashi has a habit of saying lines in a very negative, matter-of-fact kind of way to herself, which I personally found hilarious, if not just entertaining. There's also the part of the show where it likes to combine really weird themes and elements, so the concept of magic does in fact exist in the world of Jin-tae, and it can be used really well at times to aid with the comedy. Jin-tae also likes to act as a social commentary from time to time, which works both humorously and in the fact that it'll make you just think about things, even if it's just a little bit. Now to talk about the art style or visual aesthetics of Jin-tae. Now, I'm not the best at explaining these kind of things, which is good because it's a video and you can see it for yourself, but generally speaking, it is a bright and colourful show, which is in stark contrast with the typical ideas and imagery we would get in our head of how a post-apocalyptic world should look. Jin-tae has this kind of more simple way of painting its world, and I think a really good example of this is how the show does torchlights. Because it's literally like 3 layers of a shape on top of each other, and they say that's like a torchlight, and you know what? It looks nice, and I really like it. Now, I should probably talk about the music. The general tracks that play throughout the show, they're fine, there's nothing spectacular, nothing terrible, it gets the job done. In regards to the opening, the animation in conjunction with the music is a really nice match, but still nothing amazing. And the vocals of the ending track I thought were nice, but at the end of the day, music tastes are all subjective anyway, so whatever. I mean, it's not like this entire video is subjective. So would I recommend Jinrui wa Suitai Shimashita? Yeah, I would. You bet I would. Jin-tae is honestly a really good show. Not the best, but whatever, who cares? The premise might sound a little bit boring, but if after having watched this video you found yourself at all curious about the show and its world, then I honestly recommend that you check it out. Have a good one.